Hello, I'm Chuck Wolf, Chief Executive for Charles J. Wolf Associates, LLC. As a motivational speaker and a leadership consultant and executive coach and trainer, I often work with very successful people in their companies. Since many can't afford a professional, I volunteer to host a radio talk show called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel, on a nonprofit community radio station in Bridgeport, Connecticut, WPKN. My reason for doing the show is to share with as many people as possible this wonderful process for helping people manage their own emotions and their relationships with others. My goal is for everyone listening to learn to use the Emotion Roadmap to make life better. As you listen to me, help others, I hope you are also learning. As a Simsbury resident, I'm delighted to be able to make the show available through Simsbury TV. To learn more, go to my website, www.emotionroadmap.com. Thank you for listening and watching. And this is Chuck Wolf, and you're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And this is my first show in 2019, so for all you listening live today, Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year. I hope it's a wonderful year for you. I hope 2018 ended on a good note, and I hope that 2019 is even better. As we go into the new year, there's typically a lot of resolutions people want to make, a lot of ideas about what they're going to do different in 2019, how they're going to be better, some ideas about how to change some negative behaviors, how to change into a more positive way of being in terms of their relationships with others, in terms of their self-esteem, having more self-esteem, more confidence going into the year, realizing some plans that have been out there for a long time that haven't quite come to fruition yet. So whatever it is that's on your mind today, we're going to have a chance to talk about that a bit. I always come prepared to talk about a few topics, but I'd kind of like to just open up the show by telling you a little bit about the show. Again, it's the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And I'm Chuck Wolf, your host. And this is the beginnings of my 10th year. Actually, this is now the 10th year I've been doing this radio show. And that's kind of a highlight for me. When I first started, I didn't know how long we'd be doing this. And it's been a really good run. It's been different times, different days. The show's on now on Wednesdays from 12 to 1 p.m., part of the community strip. It's the first and second Wednesday of each month. And I hope you can enjoy me and join me live when we're on the air. You're listening to WPKN 89.5 FM, listener-supported radio station in Bridgeport, serving Fairfield, New Haven, and Litchfield counties in Connecticut, and Suffolk County in New York, as well as communities around the world. We do podcasts. We've been doing that for a while now, and so you can listen. If you can't catch the show live, you can listen on SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher. Also have a number of shows that I really liked a lot. Many of these are interviews that I did with people that you can hear on Public Radio Exchange. Since this is a community radio station, I have access to the Public Radio Exchange, and I can put shows up on that exchange. So if you missed the interview with Helen Rice, for example, and it was Helen Rice, rather, about empathy. And if you missed some of the interviews I've done in the past, I just recently did an interview with a friend of mine from Harvard University, Judy McLaughlin, on what it's like to become a president of a university. Sort of a kind of an abstract concept for most of us. We don't really know too many university presidents, I'm guessing. Don't really have much familiarity with what it takes to rise to the top of a university and become its president, and what's involved in selecting a president, and what a president has to do once they get the position and they take over. And we talk a little bit about the new Harvard president that just came on board. Wonderful fellow. So it's fun. It's a fun radio program, hopefully, for all of you who listen, and hopefully it's a chance for you to learn. One of the goals for the radio program is to help you to understand how to use something I call the Emotion Roadmap. Over the years, I've been privileged to be part of a pioneering group of social psychologists who have become interested in this concept called emotional intelligence. And we've been really learning a lot about emotional intelligence. That is, the more and more we learn about it, the more we find out how important it is. Recently, I wrote a letter to the editor. You know, there's a concern now about legalization of marijuana. I think many of the listeners to this radio station probably support that, and probably many of the people that watch this on YouTube too support this, but not everybody does. And one of the big fears people have about marijuana legalization for recreational use is that our youth will become even more exposed to it. Everybody knows there's access to marijuana illegally in our state, in Connecticut, and in many other states where it's not legal, but there's more and more states becoming legal. Um, so we've got Massachusetts that just recently legalized recreational marijuana. So really, if anybody wants to just drive across the border, they have access to it in a legal situation where they can purchase it. Legal in Massachusetts anyway, still not legal federally. So the big concern in a newspaper article I read recently was that marijuana, which is going to be something that is going to have a tremendous impact on our youth, and people who understand how brains develop are concerned that alcohol or marijuana really both can have an impact on a negative impact on brain development for youngsters in the ages of 12 to 16 years old, and even maybe a little older. And so there's a fear there that more and more people will use it. Now, there's some different statistical studies, but it seems like a good number of them in Colorado, where was the first state to legalize marijuana, I believe, in the country for the state recreational legalization. They didn't show that there was more use among adolescents once they legalized recreational marijuana. Actually, I think the use actually went down for a bit. I don't know if it's still there, but I believe it went down for a bit. And so I don't know that fear is real. But here's something that I suggested. I wrote a letter to the editor because here's what I believe. One of the things that I mentioned is I've been among a group of pioneering psychologists who have been studying emotional intelligence since the late 1990s. And one of the studies, or many studies actually, have shown that young children who have high emotional abilities, and these are abilities to be aware of how you're feeling, these are abilities to label and talk about intelligently and understand how emotions work. These are abilities to manage emotions, your own, and the ability to influence others' emotions. And it's also the ability to understand how emotions impact how we think and to know what emotions are best for particular situations. Those are kind of the abilities around emotional intelligence that we've been studying in recent years. And one of the things that we discovered through this research is that you actually show far better responsibility, leadership, academic studies, the best possible behaviors you'd want for your children show up with children who have high emotional intelligence abilities in these areas. The least negative behaviors you'd want for your children, excessive drug use, cigarette smoking, alcohol, social irresponsibility, bad actors out in the streets doing the wrong things, people involved in small crimes. These are things that are much less likely to happen when children have high emotional intelligence abilities. People caught up in some of these other acts seem to have lower emotional intelligence abilities. And so over the years, if you've been a regular listener to the show, you know I've talked about this idea that there are social and emotional learning programs showing up in the last number of years. Probably they've been around for a long time, but they're being called social and emotional learning. That's fairly recent, within the last couple of decades. And one of the best ones that I know about is a program called Ruler, which comes from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, run by a colleague and friend of mine, Mark Brackett, and sponsored by the Yale president, who is also one of the pioneers in emotional intelligence, Peter Salovey, who's someone that I got the chance to work with very closely for a number of years. And Peter and Mark have created something very special where they have actually proven that their programs, when instituted in schools, raise all children's emotional intelligence abilities. Not just the children, by the way, because their holistic approach works with school teachers, with principals, other administrators, and with parents and with families. So I suggested in the letter I wrote to the Hartford Courant that got published that if we are to legalize marijuana, which I suggest we do because legalization is going to be all around us, so we're not really preventing anybody from getting access to it, young or old. But what I suggest is that we create sort of a lockbox mentality around any tax dollars that might come from marijuana sales and even from cigarette and other sales associated with like liquor and that we use that money to fund social and emotional learning programs in all our public schools across Connecticut. That the money is targeted to helping all schools be able to afford the wonderful programming available from Yale. It doesn't have to be Yale's program, but I think Yale's got one of the best programs, and I think they'd work with the school system. I know they want to work with the school systems all across Connecticut, and they're working with a number of them already. And if we could fund all of those programs in all these schools with social and emotional learning so that all kids are better at managing their own emotions, at knowing how to influence other people's emotions, and how to develop strong relationships that they can maintain, learn how to deal with conflict successfully, learn how to adapt to change successfully, learn how to maintain and enhance self-esteem. If they could learn these kinds of things in schools, you have less need amongst all children to use drugs, to want to get high. There's not the need or the excitement in getting high when everything already feels really good to you. So my thought was, why not take the money that might come from any kind of recreational sales use and use those tax dollars to fund social and emotional learning? That would also make our state that much more attractive, wouldn't it? Aren't we trying to bring more people in? And while the idea of legalization might turn people off who have always felt that marijuana is a very harmful and dangerous drug, why introduce another new drug? The drug is here. I think that horse is already outside of the barn door. Don't all of you agree with that? So the question isn't about keeping it from our young children. It's about, what do we do so that our young children don't really have the need to get high? And for all those that want to occasionally smoke marijuana and do it in a quiet place where they're not going to hurt themselves or anybody else, and those tax dollars roll in, let them fund social and emotional learning. To me, that would be a really good way to use those dollars. So that's my that's my opening today. I just wanted to talk a bit about that because I think that's coming, and I know that marijuana legalization is on the docket for Connecticut to look for and to look into, and that our new governor, Governor Lamont, is interested in legalization as a possible way to move the state forward. It's one of many things that seem to be a high priority. And as long as I'm on this sort of roll here, I just want to mention one other aspect that I think is really important. This is on the medicinal side. And in the new Farm Bill, I just want to point out that there is also the opportunity for farmers in Connecticut to grow hemp. The new federal law now takes CBD oil, which comes from hemp products. It doesn't have to come from marijuana, and hemp are very closely related plants. Only hemp doesn't have the THC content that gets you high. But hemp does have the CBD oil that's also in marijuana plants. But the CBD oil in hemp is used for a multitude of medicinal purposes. People are using it to lower anxiety. It's also being used to help with different kinds of pain, including back pain, without seeming to have any real side effects of consequence. And I just want to encourage the legislature, too, if you're out there and you have a chance to influence any of your legislators, to allow not marijuana, but hemp to be grown. It's a real boon to our state farmers, and I'm a big supporter of farm aid to small farmers, small family farmers as well. And so I just want to encourage you to encourage your legislator, your representative, to go out there and support the possibility of farmers being able to grow hemp in their fields. It's like I think I saw a number around $100,000 an acre in revenues. I don't know, that's not necessarily profit, but revenues that could come in from the ability to sell hemp, because the CBD oils are generating a tremendous amount of interest in all kinds of medicinal fields. So that's just my opening around some of the things that I thought were important to say. I also want to give a lot of credit to at least the beginning tenure of Governor Lamont's term. I wish all the new elected legislators tremendous success, and I hope that there's a bipartisanship. I know we're a heavily Democratic state, but I hope that we include Republicans, just because I think that when we include everybody's voices, we get our best ideas. And so while there's a chance to just run over Republicans because Democrats rule right now, we all know that all Democrats don't agree with all other Democrats. But if we get all our voices in the room together And I know that Governor Lamont seems to be trying to get people from all kinds of different um, groups within the state to be participating in helping him to create a really positive economy and make a lot of positive choices for our state moving forward, because we've got some real challenges ahead. And I want to wish everybody tremendous success going forward. So, having started with that, I know that's sort of a different kind of take for the show, but the show is about helping people to feel the way they want to feel. And so I wanted to get out and say some things. I thought, I have a chance to be at a microphone and talk about things that I think would make the state feel good. And all of you that are listening in Connecticut, and as well as New York, I guess, is doing some of these things as well. There's a lot of different talk in all these states now about how do we deal with some newness, some innovative ideas, and how do we do better? How do we do better with each other? And on the one of the other things that struck me about 2018 that I've worked really hard to be better at, and this is something else I sort of would like people to call about today if you're up to it, is do you have an inspiring story about something that you tried to do this past year that worked, that you actually were able, you might have said at the beginning of 2018, hey, there's a couple of things that I want to do different this year. And if you had a couple of things you wanted to do different this year, and one of them was, I want to be more civil with the people that I don't always agree with. When most of us have people in our lives that have different points of view. It seems like a lot of people have different points of view about politics these days, even within their own families. And in some instances, it's caused family members to have strained relationships, and sometimes even no relationships with people that you love but you can't talk to anymore. It isn't just about politics. It's often about money. It's even sometimes about sports teams. But there's a lot of things that might keep us apart. And I want to talk a little bit about some things that I've been practicing that I suggest, if you're interested, that you might practice too, in terms of how do you help to have a better relationship with somebody with whom you disagree. Now, there's a lot of articles out there on the web. I've seen a bunch of them. I actually get, I get Google highlights for anything to do with emotional intelligence. You could do it too if you wanted. You just go to Google and you just ask you put in your email address for highlights that you want to get, and they'll send you an update every day about anything that they think is relevant. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't relevant. But, so anyway, I see a lot of information about how do we talk to one another. So let me give you something concrete that you can do. And it's not impossible. It's very easy to explain. It's somewhat hard in practice to do because we feel so strongly about so many things that we feel like we've got to talk. We've got to say what we believe. And sometimes you don't. And let me explain that to you. So again, the show's about take the wheel and control how you feel and also how others feel. So if you have a particular person that you've struggled with over the years, or in recent years anyway, but maybe over many years, where you often disagree on politics, on sports, on other world events, how you spend your money. There are all kinds of things that we can have disagreements about. Abortion, that's another one that's always a hot topic. There's a lot of things that we just can't seem to come to agreement with another person. But instead of trying to convince somebody about what I believe is right, if I really want to get along with them and understand that there's really very little chance for me to change how I'm feeling, or for him or her to change how he or she is feeling, then here's something practical you can do. Basically, it involves just listening. But to be an active listener, you have to be a participant. So it isn't just that you just sit there quietly and let the other person expound on their points of view. You actually reflect back to them a bit about what you hear them saying. Say, so you believe that the president has done all these different things correct, and you think that's more important than perhaps his personality, because that's a typical one, right? Especially for PKN listeners, that people who might support the current president, you can't understand that at all. Now, I realize we have listeners that also support the president, but my point is that a lot of people that listen, in Connecticut in general and in the Northeast, have difficulty understanding how anybody can be supportive. My point isn't that you're supportive of the president if you're talking to somebody else who is, but you just allow them to finish speaking. And then you say, so tell me more about something that you're really interested in, by the way. In other words, instead of challenging what they believe, Ask them to tell you more. Ask questions about why they feel so strongly about that. What makes them believe that? And you know the interesting thing about this? Partly you have to shut down the voices in your own mind when you're doing this that are going to be screaming at the other person about why that's so wrong, whatever it is he or she is saying. But if you just quiet those voices and you allow yourself just to listen, you might actually come away feeling a tiny bit different. You're probably not going to change, but you're going to feel maybe a tiny bit different, or at a minimum, just have a little more understanding. But the most important thing that happens is if you're not challenging and you're just saying, okay, at the end of all that conversation, you simply say, okay, John or Mary or Sam or Muhammad or Ahmed or Jose or whoever it is you're talking to. You just say at the very end, that's interesting. It really hasn't changed how I feel or what I believe. But I appreciate knowing and understanding more about why you feel the way you do. Thanks. And then move on to another topic. But before you move on, make sure that that other person, one, feels listened to, two, feels understood, and three, has exhausted themselves about it. That they don't feel there's anything else they could say to possibly convince you to believe as they believe. That they're really done. And you do that by saying, is there anything else that you'd like to tell me about this? And funny thing is they might think a moment later about, yeah, there's another thing I want to tell you. Don't get mad about that. Let it happen. Because at some point, it's over for them. They finished saying everything they wanted to say, and they're done. And you haven't challenged it, and you haven't insulted them, and you haven't argued with them, and you're okay. And so are they. Now, I made it about the person who is a Trump supporter. But what if you're on the other side, and you're a Trump supporter, and you're listening to people tell you all these horrible things about Donald Trump, Donald this, he did that, and then again, same thing for you. Ask them why they feel that way. Allow them to speak openly and as long as they want to about all the things they dislike till they're done. And ask them, is there anything else that you'd like to tell me? And when they're finished, and they're really finished, and they feel listened and understood, respected and valued, they will appreciate it, and you will appreciate that you've done something for your relationship, not just for them, but for your relationship with that other person. And then you're done with that topic, unless some new information comes in. And that's an agreement that you can have with yourself or with others if you really want to keep talking about this stuff, is that if something new surfaces, a piece of news gets reported, the Mueller report comes in, or whatever it might be, something changes, allow the same thing to happen. And you will find yourself, in a way, just simply allowing the other person to say everything they need to say. And then you can talk about the things that you have in common and the reasons why you love each other. Why you're friends, or why you care about one another, why you're empathic towards each other. Because one issue, we can't let one issue separate us when we have loving relationships with people we live with and care about. That's the way I believe. And I hope that's helpful to all of you because, I wanted to do something that hopefully is a bit inspiring for all of you and feels like, hey, it's 2019. Let's make some resolutions. And I want to share with you my inspirational story is I've been trying this a good part of the year. I've been trying not to import my feelings on people who disagree with me and do just what I said to you. And I don't always get it right, and you won't either, because there'll be a part of you that will fight with what I'm telling you to do because you want to tell them why they're wrong. It's a no-win scenario when you do that, though, I find. Not that you can't change people's opinions. You can. But people who feel disrespected and not heard, you're not going to change their opinions. Once everybody's said everything they needed to say, and people feel like, nothing's changed for me, you got to be okay with that. You got to be okay with that. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. So my inspirational story is that I was doing that this year, and my relationships with key people in my life are much, much better as a result of it. And again, I haven't been perfect at it, but I've been so much better at it and real clear when I step over the line sometimes and then pull back and even apologize if I feel that's useful. So I hope that's that's helpful to you. If you've got a story about something that inspired that you did this year that you feel was inspirational for you and it made a difference and you're able to do it, and you could tell us a bit about what you did and what it took to do it, because a lot of us are starting out 2019 with all these good ideas about how to be more resilient, how to be more impactful, how to be more influential, how to be more confident, how to lose weight, how to stop drinking so much, or whatever it is we're doing that we want to change and we want to be better at. And yet all of us know this, that pretty soon, month goes in, 2 months maybe even the last 3 months, but all of a sudden we're back doing what we were doing before. But if you've got a story about something that you actually managed to do over 2018 and it worked, give me a call. Maybe you can inspire others. Give me a call at 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And I'll give you a moment. Again, 203-336-9756. I'll repeat the topic. I'm asking you if you have something that you could tell us about that actually worked for you this year, that you did that's different than what you'd done in years past. It was just something you set out to do and you're able to do it, and what it took for you to be able to be successful. That would be really helpful for others to hear, because I like to think of ourselves, we're on this community track from 12 to 1 p.m. at WPKN, and we are a community. Sometimes I have people call in with situations and challenges they're facing, and I try to help them with that using this emotion roadmap. The emotion roadmap, by the way, is this idea that sometimes how you're feeling isn't how you want to feel. That's why I just told you all that information about how to make a relationship with somebody that you really care about and want the relationship to work. How to do that differently than maybe you've been doing it in the past, and what can really work. And so how you change how you feel to something more ideal is really what the show's about. And one of the ways we do that is by inspiring one another and by being a community and by supporting one another. And sometimes when people call in with really challenging situations, I offer whatever advice that I can after years of being a psychologist and a leadership coach and, all the different professional experiences and life experiences I've had. And then others will call in, people from the community who have also dealt with something that sounds similar to what they heard the caller who just finished talking to me experience, and they want to share what they've done that really works well for them. So if you've got something and you think it's worth sharing, and I hope you do, it doesn't have to be a big deal, but just something that was important to you and how you did it, give me a call. 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. While we're waiting for a caller, and again, the number is 203-336-9756. I just want to remind everybody you're listening to WPKN, and we've got a caller. Hi, this is Chuck Wolf. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please? I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Oh, hello. My name is Margaret.
Hi, Margaret. Thanks for the call.
Hello.
So you have something you can share with us?
I do, and it may not be what you're looking for in a caller. I just tuned in, but something that helps me to overcome certain, urges, eating, drinking, what have you, is brushing your teeth. You brush your teeth, you floss, and you put all that effort into it, and your cravings go away because now, you can't mess up what you just worked so hard to achieve.
Oh, that's so interesting, Margaret. I've actually heard something quite similar from my wife. She does that too. And okay, so but for you, there's some closure around it, I guess, right?
Is it for composure?
No, closure. In other words, you're done for the evening. You're not going to put anything else past your teeth and gum line because you've cleaned up, you've flossed, you've brushed, and now you took about 5 to 10 minutes, however long it takes to do that. And now it would seem silly to go ahead and have anything else after that.
Well, it does bring closure, but from a microbiological perspective, I've read some literature that suggests that the bacteria and microorganisms in your mouth sometimes dictate your cravings. And maybe by practicing better oral hygiene, not to suggest that when you overeat it's because of poor oral hygiene, but, maybe by just engaging in better oral hygiene, you're decreasing the messages, if you will, that these microorganisms are kind of sending out.
Well, that's a fascinating aspect to it. Yeah, no, I'd never really thought about the actual physiological implications, but that's a very interesting point.
So in the new year, brush your teeth more.
Okay. Thanks a lot for the call, Margaret. I really appreciate it. Happy New Year to you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. So anything really, and that's actually something I hadn't really considered before. Now, again, I'd heard the idea of, for me, it's closure, I guess, is, you brush your teeth, you floss, and then you don't put anything else in your mouth after that, whatever time you might do that. Now, I do that when I go to bed, but that could be very late. So if I did it earlier, which is something that my wife has actually encouraged me to do as well, that's another way to do it. I think I got another call just a minute. Hi, this is... I think if you were trying to call, you can call again. 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. So what we're asking people to call about is just if they've got something that they've done in this year or others that really has worked for them. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who's calling, please?
Hi, my name's Kelly. I live in Trumbull.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for the call.
Absolutely. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And so have you got a story for us?
I do. I think one of the things that I did last year that is something I've been meaning to do for a really long time is I started volunteering at a school in Bridgeport. And that has just been something that's been really important to me for a long time, is thinking about helping the community, and not just my community, but a community that's a little more in need. And so I think just generally speaking, it's more of something that I've been meaning to do for a really long time. I finally just made it happen, even though it took a while to have all the pieces fall into place. I was really persistent about it and followed up and, just generally made it happen.
Now that's a really interesting story, Kelly, because again, it's one of those things where it sounds like, wow, why wouldn't everybody want to do something where they gave back to the community and volunteer? I mean, personally, for me, this show, all the programs on PKN are volunteers, but the show for me is if I'm able to help somebody, it just really feels good to me. I actually, it's a win for me if somebody happens to call in and I'm able to help them. So, I think it feels good, doesn't it, when you're able to help somebody, a child in some situation, or a teacher, or whatever way you might be volunteering, when you're actually doing it. But that's not the question so much, because that's a fairly obvious one. But what do you think made this last year, the year that you did it, versus other years when you've thought about it?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer is I've been very, very concerned about the climate in the country over the past couple of years, and just, really concerned about what services are being cut when budgets get cut, and really, it had more to do with what's the most good I can do right now. I mean, I have 4 of my own kids that are in a school, in a really lovely school system, but to me it was more, I felt like there were other people that needed my attention even more than my own kids or in my own community. And so it's been really eye-opening to see, this school is 3 miles from where I live, and it might as well be another country. And I've just found it to be extremely rewarding. And, I mean, I'm very attached to these kids now. I come back and tell my own kids about some of the experiences I have so that they can understand that not everybody in the world has the same lifestyle they do. And it's been something I really now feel that I need to do. Like, I really look forward to it, and I feel so very fortunate that I've been able to meet these kids and meet these teachers and have this experience.
It's a great story, Kelly. I hope your story inspires others. It's nice to do for others. It's, so part of this was the fact that there was more need in the sense that there were budget cuts relative to what's happening in the country, et cetera. And so you felt that, I guess this was the time, and you wanted to do something of value with your time, and you felt, where can I do the most good? And you thought, well, maybe it's the town next to me as opposed to the town that I'm living in. It sounds like it
right?
sounds like it's really working great for you. I hope it inspires
Yeah.
others.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for the call. I really appreciate it. And thanks for
You
listening.
bet. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Happy New Year.
Thanks.
Bye. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Margaret and Kelly. So anybody else want to call? The number again is 203-336-9756. Is there something that you did last year that you feel pretty good about and you're able to do, and it's making a difference in a good way for you and maybe for others as well? But just something that you're doing that you really could share that you think might help inspire some others. So the number is 203-336-9756. What are some things others do? You know, some of you who are maybe looking for things, if you haven't thought of something on your own, my guess is that either in your town, in your whatever religious institution you might belong to, whether it's a mosque, a synagogue, a church, there's probably social action committees where people in need have some need of you helping out. There's probably some either public institutions or private institutions that are desperate for volunteers. So those are some ideas possibly. But it isn't just about volunteering. It's also about doing something that makes you better somehow. And again, it might be changing some habits that you've been trying to change for years. You know, sometimes we think, well, you know, it's people that aren't smart that have bad habits. I don't know if that's true. I mean, I see all kinds of nicely dressed people. When I drive here, I'm on the highways to get to the radio station. And I'm sure you see this too when you're on the highways, or even in traffic and local streets, where you see people texting who are well dressed, look smart, look educated, and yet they're looking at their phone and texting. That's a crazy habit, isn't it? How do you stop yourself from doing things that you know are wrong, and yet provide some kind of immediate gratification that somehow makes it worthwhile at the moment? And you know, hopefully nothing seriously bad happens when you're doing it, but I encourage everybody, if that's a habit you have, drop it immediately before you or somebody else gets really hurt. But anyway, so if you've got some habits that maybe you've tried to change and were successful in changing, give me a call, 203-336-9756. Or if you've got another kind of volunteer thing that you've done and you want to talk about that and how it makes you feel. I often will talk about, you know, when people call up and they're dealing with depression or sadness or grief, or, you know, there's a lot of feelings that we really struggle understanding, you know, not so much where they come from necessarily. I mean, if I want to look at my life and say, why am I depressed today? I could probably find a few things that are depressing. I'm pretty sure I could. And I'm pretty sure almost everybody listening could pretty easily find some things that are depressing. And yet I don't feel depressed. And yet another person might feel depressed. What's the difference? How do we become resilient? How do we become more emotionally intelligent? What is it that we can do? I was reading in a Harvard Business Review over the weekend, the newer one that came out. I don't read a lot of professional magazines, but I like Harvard Business Review, partly because they're not written in an academic way. I mean, a few articles are, but a lot of it is written in somewhat practical terms. Now, if you've never been involved with businesses, you're probably not going to enjoy it. But if you've ever, you know, either been a manager or a worker in a big company or even a medium-sized company, or you ever run a small business, even a lemonade stand. There's certain things about leadership that they write about. There's certain things about teamwork that they write about. And one of the articles I was reading today, or actually yesterday, was about management science. There was some work done by Frederick Taylor and a number of other people were engaged in what is called management science, which was this idea that if we could only be more efficient, if we could only make our organizations more efficient, that would drive higher levels of productivity and would drive higher profitability. And they really struggled over the years to find ways to do things as quick and as fast and as successfully as they could with minimum wasted time or effort or energy. Sounds like a great goal, but it also made people kind of do a lot of routine things that felt somewhat boring. As opposed, if you're building a car by yourself, and you have to understand how engines work, and you have to understand the mechanics of a car and how it all works when it fits together. If you have to understand what body work is about and how the outside of the car has to be put together, and you have to understand what fuel is going to drive that car, and you have to understand how brakes are going to stop that car, that's all really interesting at some level, right? But if you're only working on a brake lining and you're just doing you're just tightening a few screws on an assembly line every day, all the time, how engaged are you? How interested are you in that work? Even though maybe that's the fastest way to do it, I'm sure it's faster than one or two or five or 10 people trying just as a team to put a car together. But how disinteresting is that and disengaging is that? So one of the things the article was about was like maybe we need less management science and more emotional resilience in organizations. Something that keeps people coming back and being interested. What gets you up in the morning and brings you to work that makes you want to go there? That makes you look forward to the kind of challenges and opportunities that you're going to face during the day? What causes you to feel engaged at work? How do you do more of that? How do you change how you feel? How do you get more feelings that are going to change how you feel? Actually, if you've done something at work and some of your organization has done something that's made you feel more engaged in recent times, that's another thing that, again, inspirational stuff is the kind of show I'd like today. So if you've got a story about something at work that's making a difference, making you feel more engaged, something you might have initiated or somebody you work for might have initiated, that's also something else to give me a call about. So if you got something for you, if you're doing something for others in your personal life, if you're doing something professionally that makes you feel more engaged and better about your workplace, or something's happened that makes you feel engaged and better about your workplace, if you found ways to talk to people in more less problematic ways and more empathic ways, give me a call and share it. 203-336-9756. I've got about 10 minutes left. So a couple more calls. 203-336-9756. I'll wait. Two zero three 336-9756. Now, just if I don't get another caller, I there's another topic that I wasn't sure I was going to go to today, but I can, and that is there's certain kind of things that have happened that are important to me that I care about that not everybody else cares about. I know, but that's professional sports. I grew up in Massachusetts, and when you grow up in Massachusetts, in the age I grew up as a young boy, most of my friends, almost everybody I grew up with, we were diehard Boston sports fans. So we cared deeply about the Red Sox. We cared deeply about the Patriots. We cared deeply about the Celtics, and we care about the Bruins. I think you didn't hear me say deeply about the Bruins, but there are some that care deeply about the Bruins too. My point is, this is an exciting time for Boston sports fans because, as anybody who's listening and who's paid attention knows, this was an amazing World Series year for the Red Sox. They've actually been the best team in baseball in this entire millennium. Since 2000, the Red Sox have won 4 World Series championships. Remarkable accomplishment. And even perhaps more remarkable is the job that this new manager did. For the first time, Alex Cora came along, and he was just absolutely amazing. The calls he made, the choices. The Red Sox are picking him as an untested manager. I believe he might be the first Puerto Rican ever to manage at the major league level, and he had never managed before. And not only had he never managed before, but he was the assistant manager, bench coach, I think, in the year before with the Houston Astros, who were also the World Series champions. So he went from being an assistant in the management team of the Houston Astros that won the World Series 2 years ago to this year being the manager of the Boston Red Sox who won a World Series. So anyway, remarkable year. And then the New England Patriots, which sometimes people love to hate a winner, and the Patriots, I think it's the ninth year in a row they won their conference. I mean, that's again unheard of, and they people counted them as down and out. They lost a couple of tough games in recent times, but my wife and I are season ticket holders, and we like to go to the games. And we don't go to all of them, but we like to go. And we saw the last two games recently. We saw them play the Jets and the Bills and win their last two games. And now they're in position for another run at the Super Bowl, which again is astounding. And so I'm very excited about the Patriots. And those are things that, for me, are inspirational to see how teams are able to deal with loss and failure and injury and still turn around and be champions. That's what I'm hoping happens for people that listen to this show. Not that you become sports fans and cheer for the same teams I cheer for, but that you learn how to deal with loss and failure because we all experience them. And this idea of resilience is to be able to get back up when we get knocked down, to not stay down, to not feel defeated. I was doing some coaching with somebody one day on the phone here. Was having somebody called in and had something they were very concerned about. It had to do with a man and his daughter. He had become estranged from his wife. She had become his ex-wife, and she was unfortunately. It sounded like she had some abnormality. I don't know, maybe mental illness. Hard to know when you're just talking to somebody on the phone about their experience of their ex. What's really happening, but the way he was describing it sounded like she had some challenging mental issues, and she was turning his daughter against him. If the daughter lives with the mom and she's very close to the mom and the mom is normal a lot of the time, the daughter, something like that can happen, unfortunately. But he was desperate for finding a way to get back in touch with her. And he felt like everybody was telling him, look, maybe you just got to let it go. You really just got to let it go. And I gave him some different advice. I said something that I've learned over the years, that you never fail until you stop trying. You never fail until you stop trying. So if you got something that's really important in your life that you care deeply about and it's not working out the way you want to rethink it. You want to take some time out. You want to reflect on it. You want to talk to people that you think might be helpful and giving you some meaningful advice that helps to guide what you do next. You don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, what if your approach that you tried didn't work before, thinking it's going to work now? That was what Einstein called insanity. Keep doing the same thing, expect a different outcome. It's not that you don't keep trying the same thing. You want to do things. You want to do things sometimes the same. It may be that the timing was bad, and maybe if you do it at a different time, that would change it a bit. So it isn't quite the same thing. But it's more about that you just don't give up. And what I said to this man was that, I think if you stay in your daughter's life, you allow her to know that you're always there for her. And while you understand she doesn't want to see you now, that someday she may want to see you, and that whenever that day comes, you're going to be there for her. Just want her to know how to contact you, how to reach out to you, and in any way that you can ever be a part of her life, you want to do that. And she knows that someday she's going to reach out to you. It may be 6 months from now. It may be a year from now. It might be 5 or 10 years from now. But if you constantly communicate in ways that aren't invasive and aren't threatening, but just demonstrate a caring and a love, that you will at some point in your life have a relationship with your daughter. Only when you give up have you failed at that. And that, I mean, he actually started crying a bit because, he thought there was no chance. And what I was saying was, you just have to be really patient. And you can't be pushy, and you can't get scary, and you can't be threatening, and you don't want to attack her mom. You just want to let her know you're there for her. When she needs you, when she wants you, you'll be there. So The idea of being able to deal with loss and failure, sometimes sports are a metaphor for how individuals can be. When I read the article in Harvard Business Review about resilience in organizations, I thought about resilience in people. And we want to be really efficient with our lives, but we also want to do the things that really matter. We want to make sure that while, we've got some deadlines and we've got some projects and we've got some, responsibilities to our professional lives, and we've got some responsibilities in our communities, and we've got some things that are important for our families, and you really want to step back and say, what's most important? What matters most? What's most meaningful? Make sure you do those things. Make sure you do those things. It was really interesting. There was a chart that said, some years ago I'd seen it, it was a time management chart. It said, we always make times for what seems urgent, even when it's unimportant, but it seems urgent. And we always make times for what's urgent and important. Like, you got to pay our tax debt. We have housing taxes are due in January for many people. So you got to make sure that gets paid, things like that. But there's also the things that are really important that never seem urgent, like spending time with your grandkids, taking that ride to see your grandson play soccer, your granddaughter, play softball, a grandson or granddaughter in a choir, something that just seems like, I'd love to do that, but I've got so many other things that are priorities for me right now. Make sure you do the things that are most meaningful. And, as we go into this new year, make sure you're thinking about what matters most to you. There's an old saying, an exercise in leadership that asks people to, as they're, stepping into leadership or been leaders for a while, hey, what do you want for your legacy? When you're gone, because at some point all of us are gone, what do you want people to say about you? What's your legacy? And as you take a few minutes to think about what you want for your legacy in your life, what do you want your family to remember about you? And so forth. It's interesting, but very few people, when they say, what do you want people to remember about you? You don't want to feel like you spent too much time at the office and not enough time at home. You want to find a balance between what really matters to you and what you care about going forward, and what you want people to remember about you, how you want to be remembered. So when you make time for those others in your life that are really meaningful, but not always urgent, because it never seems urgent that you have to do these things until the opportunity is gone. I think of the Cats in the Cradle song. It's just that opportunity isn't always there. Take advantage of the things that matter most in your life. And I wish you all a very happy 2019. You listen to Chuck Wolf, the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And it's WPKN 89.5 FM in Bridgeport. And thanks so much for listening, everybody. Happy New Year to you. And to all those who see me on YouTube in Simsbury, Happy New Year to you too. Take care.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.